this meeting of the City Finance Committee to order. Do we need a roll call on these? Roll call, please.
Chair Friedman.
Here.
Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
And Councilmember Gutierrez.
Great, thank you. Is there any public comment for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, and then I'll turn over to Ms. Doubles for today's item.
Thank you, Chair Friedman, Councilmember Harmon, and Councilmember Gutierrez. I'm here today to present to you a proposal for the acquisition and rehabilitation for a property for a transition house. And that property is located at 817 North South Sepulveda Street. A little background on Transition House. They have assisted homeless families in Santa Barbara since 1984. They provide shelter, supportive services, and respite care to the homeless and provides capable and motivated individuals with programs that will lead to permanent housing and self-sufficiency. They have been a local nonprofit organization since, of course, 1984, and they currently operate 2 permanent housing programs serving formerly homeless families who have lived in transition houses, emergency shelter, or transitional housing facilities. These programs provide housing for 2 low-income populations, families who are able to increase their incomes and manage their finances sufficiently to afford market rate rent in the future, and families on fixed incomes who need long-term permanent housing and support services. For this proposal, at this property, they will be the owner, the property manager, and they will also be the supportive services provider if needed. So, as you can see on attachment 1 in your staff report, they have submitted a request letter, and the request is for a $1 million loan for property acquisition, along with a $300,000 grant for rehabilitation of the property. The project description. This will be both for acquisition and property rehabilitation. On one lot, there's 3 dwelling units, and it consists of 1 3-bedroom, 2-bath, along with 2 2-bedroom, 1-bath units. The parcel is a 12,000 square foot parcel. And the 3-bedroom, 2-bath home was built in approximately the 1930s. And the 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes were built in the 1960s. This will be for low-income family housing, and there will be supportive services that are optional on their property. This is actually a map of the property onto your left, where it's located there as far as the parcel is concerned. And then on the right, this is a street view of the property. The project cost, the property was listed for sale at $1.6 million. The property purchase price has been negotiated to $1.450, and the estimated rehabilitation costs are at $300,000. So the total will be $1,750,000 plus any closing costs. So the city is going to be giving a $1 million city loan, and that will be with a 30-year term. It will be earning 3% interest, and the repayment terms will be on residual receipts, meaning that if there is positive cash flow every year that receipts are turned into the city, then a payment will be calculated. Otherwise, there will be no payment if there is not a positive cash flow on the property. They're also going to be needing a $300,000 city grant. This will be to rehabilitate the property, and that is in order to maintain and preserve our affordable housing there. And just a feasibility study really quickly for $1.7 million for 3 dwelling units. If you divided that out, you'd get about $583,334 per dwelling unit. And that's really kind of in comparison to Santa Barbara's median home price for single family residence is approximately $1 million. So you can see that there's a real benefit to this property having 3 units and the per dwelling unit price. And the financing will be as shown here. Montecito Bank and Trust loan, they will be getting about a $300,000 first trustee. They'll be in the first position. The city usually will go ahead and subordinate to the lien as far as as long as our covenant is in first position before that lien. So that will be occurring in this situation.
Councilwoman Harmon.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. So just for the benefit of folks that may be watching, can you tell us a little bit about how the liens work? So the way that this system will be set up, even if Montecito Bank and Trust forecloses on this property, our affordability covenant will remain. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. And normally, because the affordability covenant runs with the land, so anybody that were to take possession of this property has to actually take a transfer of that affordability covenant as well.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, our City of Santa Barbara loan, if it's approved, would go into the second trustee position for the lien. That still is, of course, under our affordability covenant, which will be in first position. Transition House is actually putting up reserves of $150,000, plus they will be paying any of the closing costs and any other costs that are incurred. And then the city will also, if approved, be granting a loan of, a grant of $300,000 from our CDBG funding, and that is through our home rehabilitation loan program. So this shows that the project financing totals $1,750,000, which is the total project cost. So we will be placing a long-term affordability covenant on the property for 90 years as per council policy. This will be restricted to low-income family tenants. And that definition, families whose household gross income does not exceed the upper limit of the low-income category as published by the United States Department of Urban Development, or HUD, which is 80% of the area median income. Today, this would be defined, for example, as a family of 4 that earns no more than $88,300. And that amount is adjusted according to the family size. So in summary, this project offers affordable housing for our impoverished families here in Santa Barbara. Transition House is a very well qualified and experienced low-income housing provider. And the project meets our city's consolidated plan objectives and housing element priorities. And all of our accounts have sufficient reserves to support this request. And staff's recommendation is that the Finance Committee consider and recommend that the City Council approve the requested $1 million loan and $300,000 grant, authorize the allocation of $470,000 from the Home Investments Partnership Program, which is entitlement funding that the city receives, and $530,000 from our Affordable Housing Fund, which is from program income that is paid back from old RDA successor money to fund this requested loan. as well as authorize the allocation of $300,000 to provide a city housing rehabilitation loan program, or our HRLP is the acronym for that. A grant using community development block grant funds, another entitlement program that we get. In this case, these funds are actually program income that's been paid back from previous CDBG monies. And authorize an ordinance of the City Council approving the loan agreement and affordability control covenant imposed on real property for a term of 90 years to be recorded on the property, and that is per council policy as well. And authorize the Community Development Director to execute such agreements and related documents subject to approval as to form by the City Attorney as necessary.
Great. Thank you for the presentation, and I will open up to questions from my colleagues. Councilmember Harmon.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. So on the residual receipts point, I'm just curious, do we have a sense of timing for when we will start to receive that repayment, when we take into account construction, rehab, debt service, whatever? Do we have a sort of ballpark, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Yes, Councilmember Harmon. Actually, whenever we do a project, they have to turn in a whole financial pro forma of that project. So we typically on affordable housing projects, because of the debt service that they will also have to pay back for Montecito Bank and Trust, a lot of times cash flow is really kind of almost non-existent because the rents are at such an affordable low income category. So it basically, positive cash flow is when they've taken in all of their rent or, revenue for that property, and then basically has already taken out their debt service and any operating costs, and then if it's a positive cash flow, can pay back. In this case, I don't have the actual pro forma in front of me. Kathleen Boschke is here from Transition House. She's the executive director, and she may be able to help answer that.
Good morning, or I guess it's good afternoon now. This is on. Thank you for considering our project. In answer to your question,
It's not on.
Is that what that means?
Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't think it was on. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for considering Transition House's project. And in answer to your question about residual receipt notes, Transition House has had this form of agreement with funding from the city before, and indeed, the cash flow on the project is not expected to be high enough to make regular payments back on that note. The low income or the low cost rent that these low income families will pay probably will not allow us to make payments back on that.
Ever.
Potentially never.
Potentially
Yeah.
never, yeah. And usually at 30 years, they may
If.
be coming back to ask for forgiveness,
Okay.
or to rewrite a loan, or something that will help to ensure that this property stays affordable.
Well, I personally think that's awesome, and I think that's something to be proud of, and I support it, and I did not at all mean to convey anything other than I'm 100% behind that approach. I think it's just great if we inform people about how it works. So I really
Sure.
appreciate you guys taking that time.
Yeah, and I appreciate that as well. Whenever we talk about having residual receipt notes, it's a mystery to most people, including maybe outside foundations that are looking at our financials, and we do need to tell that story. So I appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gutierrez.
I have a question on the $300,000 from the CDBG funding. So if we approve it, are they still going to have to go through the application process?
So, Councilmember Gutierrez, this actually is program income from CDBG, so it's a little different. It's not the actual grant process that you are thinking probably every year that the application cycle comes. This is actually restricted to housing projects, and we used to have long ago a program that's the HRLP, which actually was doing a lot of single-family residence rehabilitations at that time. It has since been, they've tried to actually wind that down. And so what we have now is we don't actually take any of our CDBG entitlement anymore to fund that program. What we do is everything that we get in repayments from old loans that we've had, we actually use that funding to help now rehabilitate like multifamily nonprofit affordable housing projects that need rehabilitation. Thank you.
And I had a question. So the property now, it's currently, all three homes are owned by a private property interest.
Chair Friedman, yes, that is correct.
And there's no affordability restrictions on these in any way?
There is not currently.
And they could sell that property at any time, make a hotel or whatever they want to do with it in the future, should they so choose?
They are in contract right now, have accepted the bid from Transition House.
Let me just clarify. If they weren't going into this, they could do other things with that property.
That
they
is
could sell it
correct,
and
yes.
do other things with it.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. This issue had come up in some correspondence that we received at the council, so I just wanted to clarify why it's important to understand what Transition House is offering here. Before we make a motion, I need to open it up for public comment. Being that there's no members of the public here, I'll close public comment. Oh. Thank you. So there is, I'll open public comment. So, Mr. Fredericks.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedman and committee members. Rob Fredericks with the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Barbara. And my colleague and I, Skip Szymanski, and I are here to let you know that your Housing Authority is in full support of this recommendation. We have a very rich history of working in conjunction with Transition House in providing affordable housing to families in need in our community through their second stage firehouse development, MOMS, and Casa Mariana. And we've been working for years to try and add to their portfolio where it makes sense. And we saw this property and worked with Transition House to say this is a very good fit for them. And the need is out there in our community. We have just shy of 2,000 applicants. Those are households with families on our Section 8 application wait list. Those are folks that are living on the edge, and many of them become homeless or are homeless, and that's the client group that Transition House helps to stabilize and provide that foundation through housing. So I just wanted to let you know that we are in support of this, and we've been working closely with Transition House on it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fredericks. Appreciate your comments. Sorry about that. I sometimes consider you staff, not public comment. So, so with that, I'll close public comment. And I just want to make a comment before we entertain a motion. Just appreciate the work of Transition House and all that you've done for our community over almost 40 years now, coming up on it in a couple of years. And this project in particular, what it will do is it provides affordable housing for 90 years. And that's amazing for our community to have that. But it's the second component of it, which is the rehabilitation loan, because it's quality housing, because we're going to be upgrading the housing stock. So that sometimes gets lost. It's not just about providing affordable housing, it's providing quality housing for families to live in. And that's the second component of it. And the thing I'm excited about is that for families, it's a 3-bedroom, and then there's 2 2-bedrooms. So it allows families to live here, to have children, to have that ability to grow, and they're not in a studio or a single trying to move up. So it really provides that long-term stability of 90 years of quality housing. So I'll be supporting of the project. And unless there's any other comments, I'd entertain a motion.
I have comments.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Harmon.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. Well, you've spoken eloquently to the policy goals for supporting this, but being as we are here at Finance Committee, I just want to talk about the money a little bit. And I know I've been kind of trying to beat this drum, and a lot of people are sick of me saying it, but for our city to provide equity in the form of a grant and to be a true partner in these projects is, I think, the ultimate goal for us. I think it's necessary. We talk a lot about the challenges of building capital A or low capital A affordable, low income housing, even workforce housing following the demise of the RDA. And to me, this is the way that we do it is we can be true partners with the folks that are out there trying to provide that by really giving of funds and providing that little extra bump to get us over the line to getting this built. So from a finance side, I'm grateful to our staff for moving this forward. I'm grateful for all of you trying to think about creative ways to make it work, to make the financing work. And to me, this is the way that we can use our budget to serve our community. You know, I mean, that's what it's all about. I look at how we spend our money and where we invest it. You know, the stock market's great. It's awesome. We all need it. But what is my priority is using that money and investing it back into our community and having it work for the people that live here. We pay taxes. I want my tax money to go towards projects that are actually going to serve my neighbors. And this is an example of doing just that. And so I'm really grateful to everybody involved who's brought this. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to explain the finances, because I think if more people in our community understood both the challenges and the creative ways that you guys have come together to make these projects work, people would be a lot more excited to see more of it. So I'm really hopeful about what this says. I'm excited to continue in this direction. And I can't wait to see this happen. So I will move staff recommendations.
I second it. The comments that I have, I just want to thank Transition House for such a wonderful work that you've done in the community. I've seen firsthand with the students that I've worked in families in my district, and there's students that have come up from living in the streets to being part of Transition House, and now they're, finishing college or in a master's program. So thank you so much for everything you do in our community.
Well, thank you for the comments and Transition House and staff. And so with that, the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none. Passes unanimously, and look forward to hearing this at the council.
Thank you.
Anything else on the agenda today? That's it. So this meeting is adjourned.